Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, The Intersection. This is chapter 8 in the JavaScript class, and we will be looking on the hands-on project 1, 8-1. That's on page 354 in your book. So in this project you're given an HTML page that has two number boxes. One carries the value 1 and one carries the value 15, and of course the labels. So let's see what this this project look like. So let's view this on the before we do anything on the server. So here's the 1 and that's the 15 as you as their default values that we see them right. Let me just make this a little bit smaller. Okay, here's the one that comes from here, and the 15 comes from this default values. So now the idea is to have this timer runs, and then we can stop it and run it back again. So we're gonna do that with the JavaScript. So let's look at the JavaScript, or look at the steps on this project. So here is the JavaScript file that you're given. Of course, make sure that you put your name and the date here. And step number 3 says that you create a constructor function for the timer. So the constructor function syntax, it's on page 319 in your book. And so it has a special syntax. Of course, any function starts with the word function, and then the name is timer. And that's the main syntax of that function. Now if you read more on the step number 3 on page 355, you will see that the two parameters, this function will have two parameters. One is minutes, and let me just use the lowercase here. One is minutes, and the second parameter is seconds. And the main function of this function is to set certain default values to this argument, to these parameters and this argument. So we're going to change the timer, the minutes. We are going to assign the minutes the min. That's the accepted value on the argument, and then the seconds second, and the time ID to a null value. Now this is how you create the so we're done with step number 3. We go to step number 4. The syntax for the object, the prototype object, you can see that on page 327, and you can see the syntax rule for that. And so the the timer, the run pause prototype is, and it says in step number 4, the prototype, the function of the run pause has three parameters: timer, min box, minimum box, and minute box, and second box. And within this anonymous function, the run pause method adds the task described in step number 5 and 6. So number 5 and 6, we have an if statement. This if statements, that's step number 5. Testing whether the timer.time has a value. It has a value, truthy, and if it does, you will pause the timer by applying the window.clearInterval method using the timer.id as the parameter value, and then you set the timer.timeID equal to the null value. Otherwise, which is when you see otherwise, that's the else statement, or the default else. Then you have to set the interval into 1 second, which is that's the 1000 milliseconds, and store that on the set interval method. So let's do that steps. So here we are. I did my if statements and the else statement, and that's step number 5. 6, add a function called countdown and add to it the if else statement, and then you have four things that you need to do: A, B, C, and D. Add A is if a timer dot seconds greater than 0, decrease the value of timer dot seconds by 1. So that's 6A. If the timer dot seconds greater than 0, then decrease it by 1. B, else if. So we need to add an else if statement here. Else if timer dot minutes is greater than 0, decrease the value of timer dot minutes by 1, and set the value of the timer dot seconds to 59. So the else if has to be right in here after this, or after the if, before the else. So here is the 6b, else if timer dot minutes greater than 0, then timer you set it to, as it says, to 59, and then set back the minutes by 1. And so now C, else the timer reached the 0, stop the timer by running the window dot clear. So that's the else here. So this is again number 6A and 6B and then 6C and then D after the if else statement. So after this if else statement, all of those, within the function, write the value of timer dot minutes to the minimum box dot value, and timer dot seconds to the second box dot value. So we are going to write them to these boxes here. So let's do that. And now this is all the parts of 6 and 6A, B, C, and then D. We move on to number 7. It says move down to here, to this area, and then on that area we have to set the we have to declare. We're going to scroll down and declare an instance of the timer object and the name it my timer, using the min box value and the seconds box value as a parameters value for the initial value of the timer. And that's the declaration of the timer. Now we are going to 8, and on 8 we are going to create an onChange event handler for the seconds box and the my timer dot seconds to the second box value. So this is number 8 for the minutes and the seconds. And finally number 9, click on the run pause timer and create a function. I made a mistake. The timer.prototype.run pause function should include within the function countdown. So this here is the beginning of this, the start of this function here, and that's the end of it. So the function countdown should be inside the prototype. The other thing that I forgot to do is when you link your script file, make sure that you also use the defer. If you don't defer it, it's gonna run this first and then this last, and there is no definition. So you'll get an error message on this line. You'll get an error message on this line here, on this line, because it's not going to read the boxes. Okay, before we view it, let's start from the top to the bottom so you can see. And also you see that I fixed my mistake. This function now within the timer.prototype.run pause, and here is the beginning of the timer.prototype, and here's the end of it, and the function is within it, the function countdown. So that's a mistake I made, so make sure you don't make the mistake that I made. I guess I didn't think I showed you the end pause timer that on clock, because I think the recording was on pause. So here is the last step number 9, I believe. And then make sure that you add the defer. And now let's look at it, see what it looks like. Here is the timer as you see it, and now if I click on run, it runs. I click on pause, it pauses. So that's it. Thank you for watching my video on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe so you can see all the updates as I make them. Bye bye now.